1st. There will be a regular meeting following the work session at 6 o'clock. We are not all here this evening. We have Councilman, I'll think of Campbell out, and Bill must be on his way. Has anybody heard from him? Councilman Stipp? Okay. So we'll go on, though, with the program. I'd like to remind council again to refrain from asking questions till staff presentations are complete. There were some breaks the other time that we went ahead and did ask some questions, but for the most part. All right, let's start with the first one, and that's to receive an update on the activities of the Goodyear Community Health Park Partnership and a preview of the next steps toward meeting the FY16 goals for the project. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So, well, we have our city manager, Brian Dalkey, recreation director, Nathan Torres, and assistant to the city manager, Pam Weir. We will present tonight. Weir. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mayor, members of council, for this opportunity to present to you on the Community Health Park. It's been a few months since we've directly addressed this project, and there's been a lot of excitement since then. This evening, we're going to go through a few different updates. First of all, just a brief overview to sort of recenter you on what the project is and where we're at in terms of our partnership and so on. Then we'll present 3 major updates towards our one-year goals. Those will revolve around the GE Healthy Cities Leadership Academy Challenge that the city and its partners recently won and will be participating in a one-year program. Then we'll go over Nathan will go over the status of the master planning process and where we are there. And then finally, Brian will present a summary of the charter that's currently being developed to formalize the Health Park Partnership moving forward. So just to center you geographically first, as you recall, the I-10 retention basins that have previously been held by the Maricopa County Flood Control District that are just north of Interstate 10 on either side of Litchfield Road, spanning essentially from Dysart to Bullard. There's about 130 acres of land there that as of the 2014 Parks and Trails Master Plan was noted as a potential park area for the city in the future. Back in May, Goodyear, working closely with the Maricopa County Flood Control District, purchased those 130 acres for a nominal cost of $233, if you'll remember, and just an outstanding relationship developed with the county. It's an opportunity for the city to take over the long-term maintenance of that land and retain the flood retention responsibilities of that space, but then also have the potential to develop it into a real community amenity. So as of July 27th, we are the proud owners of the basins and have assumed those maintenance responsibilities within our Parks and Recreation Department. This land, as you'll see on the map, is anchored by our medical innovation corridor, including some major employers and community assets of Abrazo West Campus and Cancer Treatment Centers of America, and soon to be a site of Adelante Healthcare coming to the Goodyear community soon. So now that you're grounded geographically, I'll just share briefly our partnership as it stands now with sort of the major organizations and people that have been involved. Certainly on the periphery, there are lots of interested parties that will potentially be getting involved in the future. But as of 2014, this partnership really developed under the leadership of John Kuhn, a local engineer and consultant in the area. And he, along with Abrazo West Campus, Adelante Healthcare, Cancer Treatment Centers for America, Maricopa County, and the city of Goodyear all had conversations with one another on how we can transform this currently underutilized land into a community website that would really become a public space dedicated to health, wellness, and also community gathering, which has been one of your goals as council. As the partners came together, they developed a vision, and I like the alliteration here, from rehabilitation to recreation and everything in between for Goodyear residents, visitors, and really the whole region. This area the partners came together and sort of came up with a pre-master plan concept idea of what might go into that land, of which it's very plentiful. So the basins would be home to activities like patients of nearby hospitals and clinics would have access to green space to recover from illness and injury. Families would have a place to reflect, exercise, or play. Goodyear businesses would have access to corporate wellness facilities. They could conduct leadership trainings, team building activities, or educate their workforce on healthy living. Building on the organic farming that currently exists on Cancer Treatment Centers of America's campus on the west side of the basins, the partners would envision within the basins having some kind of demonstration gardens or raised beds so that would be accessible to Goodyear residents of all ages and abilities. While none of these amenities that you see are set in stone, we are engaged in a master planning process. They provide an idea of the potential of what this area could become. Since the purchase of the land, we have been talking about some more incremental one-year goals. Obviously, this is quite a large undertaking and will take many years to realize. In this first year, it's really around formalizing a sustainable structure to ensure the longevity of the project. So first, exploring funding opportunities, certainly. The city currently had budgeted enough money for the master plan process, as well as ongoing maintenance of $35,000 a year to ensure that the flood retention capabilities are maintained within the land. But beyond that, there aren't currently funds allocated. The hope in using a partnership model is that a lot of the funding for this space will come from corporate sponsorships, philanthropic opportunities, grant funding, and I'll be talking about one of those opportunities shortly with GE. So second, completing the master plan. Nathan will be talking much more in detail momentarily here about where we are in that process. Third, developing the governance structure. That's what Brian's here to talk to you about, in the development of a charter for the partnership. And then finally, conducting a community health assessment. We won't go into a lot of details today, but the mission of conducting a community health assessment is twofold. One, we want to make sure that as we develop the park, it really targets those health indicators and so on that the community actually needs to be responding to. And so we want it to be a data-driven development. And then number two, with this much investment of public and private sector, we want to, at the outset, have a way of measuring the impact of the park as time goes on. And so conducting a community health assessment will allow us to start to encapsulate some of that information for us over time. So that was your brief introduction. I will go into the GE Healthy Cities Leadership Program now, and after that I'll pause for some questions if you have any.
I appreciate that.
So during this first section, I want to talk about our city's one-year participation in what's called the GE Healthy Cities Leadership Academy. It's a National Innovation Award program. GE dreamt it up a couple of years ago, but released their challenge in early 2016. Their challenge to the country was for public and private entities to come together and try to impact the public health of their communities locally. Their hope is, piece by piece across the country, to overall accelerate the pace of change in healthcare in our country by these communities starting these small partnership projects and seeing the influence that can have on the rest of the nation and world. So our work with our private hospitals in the area, nonprofit healthcare organizations, and other businesses really drew GE's attention to our submission in this competition. Pursuing a land-based approach to improving public health is something that really benefits the entire community, regardless of who you are. GE's greater mission in this program is to become a leader among private corporations to raise the conversation about population health in communities across the country, driven by a variety of factors, including socioeconomic status, the built environment, education, and other variables. And so their hope is to invest in programs and projects aimed at improving these social determinants. Goodyear is proudly one of 9 winners, along with our partners, out of more than 300 applications across the country, what we were told. And we're only one of 2 west of the Mississippi. If you're curious, I can share with you a handful of the other winners. Included the other west of the Mississippi was a group out of Houston, Texas, and then most of the other winners were from the New England area. So, and these groups are targeting everything from healthy food access to helping those who have struggled with addiction get back into the workforce. There's one other land use project out of Toledo, Ohio, that's working on a healthy city downtown area, and so just some really fascinating peers in this group. So we were told that we won in September and told to keep it quiet for a month until they could formally make their announcement in October. And their innovation challenge came with a pretty robust award package that will be benefiting us greatly in a variety of ways. So it started with a 3-day program kickoff at their Crotonville campus in New York, just outside of White Plains. GE funded 10 members of our partnership to attend at their expense. Everything was covered by GE. And it was a conference that featured experts in population health, partnerships, and leadership. We were given a check that week for $25,000 for the city to use toward furthering the Health Park project. And for the next year, we will be provided with tailored webinars, trainings on a monthly basis, regular phone calls with the GE contact folks, that as we progress in the program, essentially anything that we are exploring or trying to pursue, they will use their reach and their network to help us achieve those goals. And then additional technical support. Some of the experts that they have lined up for us to talk to are quite impressive. As far as future award money, this is envisioned as a 1-year program with a potential for extension beyond that, depending on how each of the 9 winners perform. So they currently have a pool of an additional up to $250,000 that will be divided up in some combination to the successful winners after a year. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes to tell you about our experience in New York and major learnings before I pass it on. So like I said, we were there in October. The images you see are from an opportunity that our partnership had to present to all of the winners and speakers and GE staff members who were there. So there you see Mayor Lord and Brian, and then John Kuhn from our partnership all had an opportunity to participate in a presentation. Also attending on behalf of our group included Bill Wiley, the general manager of the Maricopa County Flood Control District. Nathan to my left was there. I was there as well. From Abrazo West Campus, project manager Dave Myers. John Kuhn was in attendance. From Adelante Healthcare, the future practice administrator from the Goodyear site, Chris Pua, attended with us. And then from Cancer Treatment Centers for America, we had Alan Swain, who's sitting behind me. And then Sharon Day, the division chief for nutrition for Cancer Treatment Centers for America. Just to share with you some high-level takeaways, because it was jam-packed with learning. There were a lot of inspiring and educational speakers throughout the day, and so I wanted to give you a just quick top 5 of some of the themes that we're thinking about as we're moving forward. You know, the first, it came up time and time again, is as people in the business of community building, you know, you work to make the healthy choice the easy choice. So how do we shape our community? Our park is a perfect example of one that, you know, if right outside your hospital or your workplace is beautiful space to walk and play and meditate and all of those activities, people are a lot more likely to participate in those sorts of activities when they're accessible. The second, there was a lot of conversation around the relationship between the economy and population health. Healthcare costs are rising, and so we talked a lot about how GE's interest is very much in having a healthier workforce, because healthy workers are more productive, are less likely to take sick time, et cetera. And so the economy can then be more productive when people are healthier. The third, a lot of talk about collaboration and teamwork. The partnerships that are involved in our project bring a wide variety of expertise, and that's where, as the city's role continues in this partnership, the idea is whoever's sort of the expert in that area is sort of taking the lead on the various steps. So, for example, the community health assessment, our healthcare partners are really leading that charge because that doesn't fall in our realm. Something like land use or maintaining the flood retention and so on, that's something the city will focus on. The focus on social determinants of health, I talked to you about. Healthcare, it's not just about you get sick and so you see a doctor to get better. It's also about all of the determinants that contribute to whether or not someone is more likely to be healthy. And then finally, the final message of the keynote speaker the last day was really right up in the alley of Goodyear's culture, and that's building upon the bright spots. Instead of, as we approach this project, asking what's the problem and how do we solve it, we ask what's working well for us and how do we keep cloning that and how do we reuse that strategy again and again. And this isn't the same necessarily as researching best practices, because we're in new territory. Nothing quite like this project has been done before. It's more at looking at these small pieces of things that are working in other like projects, and how do we then adapt those things to work well for us. So our next steps with GE, I'm serving as the team lead, and so we'll be participating in monthly check-in calls. We'll have our trainings and are able to reach out to our point of contact as the project progresses. There's a peer mentoring component, so the other 8 winners in the project, we will collaborate with them on how we are all progressing. In spring of 2017, and we're hoping it's earlier rather than later spring, members of GE's staff will be coming out to Goodyear, Arizona to see our space, to talk to us about our project, to meet the community. And then we will be reporting to them in May of 2017 our progress to date. And then late in the year 2017, no specific date, is when we will complete a final report and they will announce additional award funds and continuation in the program. So at this juncture, I will pause for questions on the introduction and on the GE program before I pass the presentation over.
Any questions? No? You're all right with it. Go ahead.
Okay. Mayor and Council, as you are aware, this current year we received a supplemental to conduct a conceptual master planning process for the health park, and we are well underway in that process now. We are currently in the process of reviewing 8 submittals. We had 8 respondents to the RFQ, which I will say is a good response, and actually we had all the I would say major firms in this business submit, so we were pleased with that. We have narrowed, we have an evaluation committee of myself, Brian, Stan Holmes with Abrazo, West Campus, Alan Swain with CTCA, as well as Aveen Tafoya with Adelante. And we have narrowed that process down to 3 firms in which we will be conducting interviews here in a couple weeks. So we're excited about that process and having those respondents. We anticipate this process will take 6 to 8 months to complete. Some of the major components of this conceptual master planning process is site analysis and assessment. And this is a really critical point for us because it allows us to understand what's involved with the site, what restrictions are there, what requirements from a flood control standpoint are there, but also what opportunities are there, meaning that we know that there's land that sits outside of floodplains. How can that be better designed and laid out? How can the flood components of the site be captured to make for a more friendly site and user-friendly site. So the site assessment will do that for us. We're looking at constraints, opportunities, flood control requirements, access, parking, inventory of existing trees that are on site now, how we might create a vegetative barrier between I-10 and the site itself. So that's a critical point, is the site analysis. Secondly, we will then launch a community outreach and public input portion of this. We're asking the firms to define that for us. I can tell you that it is a major focus for us to ensure that we have public participation by way of workshops, by way of online, by way of social media tools, but to make sure we engage the community in this master planning process for their input and feedback. We will also use the Parks and Recreation Commission that they're ready and anxious to get going on this as well. So we're excited about that portion. That will produce for us a couple things. The first thing is a list of amenities and desires that the community wants, that the community would like to see. And secondly, we'll make sure it aligns with our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Our goal here is to create not a traditional park, but something highly innovative that focuses on community health and wellness. And so that's the goal coming out of this. We will then take that information, roll it up into the park concept design, programming design, and charretting. And so this is where we will take the amenities and pretty much put the pieces of the puzzle together to see how things fit, what types of amenities are there, and how everything comes together. From there, the firm will produce 2 concept plans for us to consider. The concept plans will include everything we've talked about, from access and pedestrian connectivity, the infrastructure needs, and the elements that are already existing there on site, from site grading and drainage, but also the amenities. We will then be bringing those concepts back to council to review and provide us feedback as well. The final component, once the master plan, the conceptual master plan is complete, is to develop a phasing plan as well as a high-level budget plan, so we can have an idea of what's the best approach from developing the site, what goes in first, how do we establish continuity as we are developing individual parcels, and what's the cost associated with that for planning. Again, the goal here is to come out with something that's highly innovative, that may have some traditional park elements, but the other elements will be highly innovative and speak to community wellness, health type amenities. That's the ultimate goal. And again, we anticipate 6 to 8 month process here. And that's what I have about the master plan.
Thank you. Any questions? Joe?
This is a private-public partnership as we move forward, correct? We're gonna have partners like Abrazo and Cancer Treatment Center, and I don't know if you have any other partners in there. And I guess my question is, as you go through this planning process, since those companies are looking to probably use some of this park area, and I assume financing as well to be supported through some of them, is where's their input in this? You got community outreach and public input, but are they members of the committee that's kind of look at some of the areas that they were looking to serve?
Sure. Mayor, Councilmember Pizzillo, great question. They are not only on the evaluating team, the partners, but they will also participate in developing the master planning process. From the public outreach also includes not only the public, but also healthcare providers and our partners as well.
Okay. And as you move forward in the development phase and the construction costs, and I assume the city manager is going to cover that as far as the contract where we put the consortium together. You're going to be talking about that later?
Councilmember Pizzillo, I'll be talking about how we're approaching the governance, which will be the board, if you will, the public-private partnership nonprofit board.
Okay, and then that nonprofit board will probably come into where the funding sources, potential funding sources are, some commitments from some of our public partnership.
Are we into the next presentation?
You're a
Yeah.
little bit into the
Okay,
next
then I'll
presentation.
hold it.
so
I'll
I
hold
can-
it. I'll hold it
I
right
can
there
a
till we
little
get
harder
there.
then.
I'm going to
Yes.
hold them off until,
Okay,
all right,
that's fine.
just ask.
I just want to make sure that's the part that we're getting to next to make
Wait,
sure
we're
that
gonna
we,
get to it.
that's
Okay,
all
in the
encumbered,
next
so,
section,
okay.
okay? Well,
that's fine.
Sherry,
No, I'm fine. I think it's great.
anybody else? All right.
And so we're hoping that one of the outcomes of the master plan will be to produce some great visuals on what the vision is for this place. So then we can use those as tools to go out and solicit funding dollars for this project.
All right, Brian?
I hit enter.
What'd you do there, Brian?
Right.
All right.
Here we go. That one right there. All right. You can tell I'm normally not on this side, so thanks for your patience. So here to talk about the charter. And the one thing I want to point out is I still pinch myself from time to time because the reality is that if you remember from the very flood control that we bought this property from, for the park and ride, 12.5 acres, we paid $1.5 million. So that's about $2.75 a square foot. For the 129 acres, we paid $1.80 an acre. Put that in perspective, $1.80 an acre for, so $233 for that. If you're to extrapolate that, you could go as high as $15 million, but it would be definitely in the millions. So point of that is these things happen because of public-private partnerships and the vision that was really created as part of this. So what we'll be talking about is how this built the foundation for the approach we're doing on the charter. So the charter is one of three deliverables this year. We talked about the master plan, community health assessment that'll really set the baseline for health in our community, and then finally the governance. That's what we pledged to the council. That's what we pledged also to General Electric. We did have an opportunity to talk about this with council on May the 9th when we actually sought approval to proceed with the purchase of the basins. So I'm actually going to go back one more because I think it's important when we looked at developing the charter and the guiding principles for that, we didn't do this without a lot of thought. And as you recall, Arizona State University, and there was a Dvalsky school graduate course on public partner or local governance, if you will, along with the Morrison Institute. They looked at 6 organizations around the country that would help us determine how best to set up our own governance. In addition to that, and part of the pre-reads for the General Electric experience that we had, General Electric with the New York University School of Medicine and the Pacific Business Group, they sought 45 leaders getting their perspectives on really how to go about community health. And we took some elements out of that, especially in the guiding principles, but lessons from the blue zones. And Councilmember Osborne, I've heard you talk about that before and how that can really relate to increased health in your community. And really important that businesses need to engage in population health. So kept driving home the point it's got to be a public-private partnership. Then at the GE Challenge, when we were back in New York, really drove home the point that policy and infrastructure at the local level is a game changer, and that's where you can really start to see things grow as it relates to population health. It talked about communities and private sector working together, and when they do, you accelerate the pace of change. So you can see already the momentum that we have going before us. But the other is just a special role of parks, and what that is gathering places certainly, but it's an ability to inspire health and wellness, and that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish with the Goodyear Community Health Park. So in addition to the ASU, General Electric, working with 45 thought leaders at GE Challenge, we looked at one of the other winners, one of the 9 winners, Houston's Harris County Build Partnership, for how they set it up as well. And then finally, our own team, which included the stakeholders that have been talked about, John Kuhn, Abrazo West, CTCA, Adelante, and Goodyear. So in looking at this and trying to develop this, that really was a foundation for now what I'm going to present. So it's been given quite a bit of thought. But the evolution, again, is John Kuhn to Stan Holm then nudged several of us and brought us together. And we nudged the county, so you can see how this has already worked together so far. So let's just, this slide is mission and vision, and I promise I won't insult your intelligence by reading slides, but for these two, because it's very important that we look at what the mission and vision are for the Goodyear Community Health Park as established by the stakeholders. So Goodyear Community Health Park exists to make well-being a way of life. Very, very simple and to the point. But the vision, I want to hit a couple of points there, that this is going to be nationally recognized, and it already is, deploys innovative wellness amenities, which that is absolutely the goal. And why? To affect health behaviors, enhance critical care and healing, promote a culture of wellness, and we believe it to be consistent with what the council set forth in our strategic action plan as far as the vision that we have within that. So that's very important. That really helps drive where we go next. Okay, really I'm misfiring here. There, we're back on target. So the executive board, the governance, you have an executive board, and this is a voting member of the board. We're looking at up to 7 members, and currently there are 5 that are proposed. Certainly Abrazo Cancer Treatment Center in Adelante, and they all have skin in the game. They will have facilities there. It'll be very important for them to be able to work within these basins to really drive their mission, but also the greater mission of the community. And then for Goodyear, we're looking at a member of executive management. That's currently, I serve in that role. And we're looking at a Parks and Rec commissioner as well that would be part of the 5. And it's important because the Parks and Rec Commission really has the pulse of the community as it relates to Parks and Rec programs. It'll be part of the basins, by the way. But as importantly, it's appointed by the city council. So that's one where we will have the commission. It's thought that we'll have the commission actually appoint one of their members to serve on this board. So the president right now would be manager or designee for presiding over the board at this point. And you can see what the activities are. It's several. It's a strategy, it's performance, the annual report to council, partnerships, and it's this group that will really help to continue to build partnerships. It was talked about fundraising, and it is looked upon as this group to really start to leverage its network to go out and see how we can do fundraising. And as Nathan pointed out, part of the deliverable in the master plan is to have information that will help to sell really what the vision is and try and secure those. And it's important to note too that the city ultimately has responsibility for the basins. 129 acres. We need to make sure flood control is still maintained. And it's thought that probably half of that, at least half the basins, can be used outside of flood control. The basins are way too large right now. They don't need to be that large. So if you move dirt around, there's a good chance that some of that could come out. But at the end of the day, the city has to maintain control for land use and development within the basins to make sure that it keeps our core responsibility back to flood control. In addition to the voting members, we have non-voting, and these are, and right now we have one individual, and you've heard John Kuhn's name quite a bit. He was the original visionary for this, and he would be an advisory board. The biggest difference, still a board member, non-voting. And that's one where he does not have, quote, facilities right there or skin in the game, as I talked about, other than a lot of commitment of his time, which has certainly been very valuable to us. But the difference, again, being we really need some of those expertises to continue to help us out. And it also contemplates that we'll have, committees down the road and things like that that would not be part of the regular board, but we'll establish those as time goes along. So you can see what their activity levels are. Again, it's just really consistent in serving on the board without voting. So the guiding principles, it's a big list there, and we put that on there. And I just hit kind of the high points of that. The guiding principles that really drive how the board works is collaborative, community engagement, and it's very important for this group to continually be engaged in the community. Innovation, it's a commitment to the entire community, not just patients of one of the facilities there. Health, we want it to be accessible, so those basins would be accessible to all for health and wellness. Sustainability, accountability, responsive stewardship, embracing the team of public-private partnerships, and we heard that over and over again from General Electric and even from ASU and others. That's how it best works. Diversity, flexibility, and transparency. Those are the guiding principles that drive how the board will operate. So we are looking at being a nonprofit. So a nonprofit for now, we've actually been accepted by, and we haven't done anything official yet, but Partners for Health, and they're actually a volunteer organization that assists the hospital in patient transport in the parking lot and a lot of different activities. So they really do a great job for the hospital. They have said that we can work under their 501c3 for now, so they'd be our fiscal agent, as well as the audits would go through them as well, until we can be a standalone. And as part of that, obviously, their annual reports go to council, but certainly any other requirements would be part of that. Annual meeting. This just goes into some of the details. And the requirements are at least one annual meeting. That's in June, and that is the installation of the advisory board members. The quorum is established at 51% must be in attendance. We can have, because of busy work schedules, and you've heard some names of others that are like Chris Pua. That's a tough name for me to pronounce. He'll be heading up Atalante's facility there right next to Brazo. It may be that he fills in for Aveen Tafoya, who is their CEO right now. But people that have been very engaged in this may be there for, as assigned, but we'll know that in advance. And then it just goes on to the quorum. It's when the vote's taken, it's a majority vote that would pass in any of the decisions. Finally, conflict of interest. This is an important one. Conflict of interest, there are several things that we put in the draft charter, but it is making sure that we have procedures in place for current, potential, real, and perceived. So if there are issues that may come up about conflicts of interest, we want to make sure that that is transparent. And if there are any, then we'll have those disclosed and managed as part of the board. Very, very important as part of this. Changes and dissolution. So changes, a charter, it does require a supermajority vote of the executive board, and the dissolution would, if it does decide to go a different direction, the city of Goodyear would have control of how that would be liquidated. Very important, because there are assets in there, and the basin, at the end of the day, the land owns the basin, the city owns the land, and the improvements would be in the basin, so that'd be up to the city. So before I hit next steps, which I think is, before I hit there, I'll ask if there are any questions at this point.
Let's get Joe have the floor. Repeat it, just Joe, so it'll be in the minutes under this, okay?
No, I appreciate the thought process. I'm following as you're going through there, and at this point, I kind of like what you've done here. My only question is I really appreciate those that have stepped up, the 3 that you have listed on there. Any chance, because there are some other players in the area, not maybe abutting that land, so to speak, but there are some potential other players, and any chance we may be able to get a few others to come on board?
Councilmember Pizzillo, so the thought is, and the charter now is proposed to have 7 executive board members. We're starting off with 5, so it gives you some flexibility there. And then the advisory board, again, the non-voting portion of the board, that is proposed to have up to 9. And right now we have 1 confirmed, and then we have interest of others. So there is an interest in getting the word out and be able to add to the board as needed. But what we heard over and over again is we also need to be nimble. It is highly recommended you keep it small and work from there and then bring in others as you need them. Could be for task force, could be for different activities and things like that.
No, I appreciate the nimbleness because, again, the larger you get, the more difficult it is to get things done. I appreciate that. I'm thinking as this project moves forward, some other potential, when you talk about skin in the game, some others that are in that area could see value in that to help contribute as we try to get this vision to fruition. That's what I'm kind of focusing
You're
on.
saying financial.
Yes.
Let's just put it out there.
Absolutely.
So I think that's
No,
his
thank you.
concern. So
Because I think there's others in the area that
I'm sure there
that
is.
would love to, and hopefully we're exploring some of those others too that may want to step up and help contribute to the vision. So, okay.
Thank you.
Sherry, did you have a question? No?
I don't have a question. I just have a comment that I think is a great idea. It's very innovative, and I think that's what our citizens will really like. And thank you to all the partners as well. And I'm looking forward to see what the innovative health ideas come up as for a park. So I'm kind of excited.
Any comments on this side? Didn't see you wave before. Bill?
He's starting the wave.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to just start doing this. I have a couple of very, I think, minor questions. Let me start with this slide since you've got this one up.
Sure.
It says the city will arrange for the liquidation of the park partnership assets, but if the assets are built on our property, there are assets. So how can we liquidate our assets unless we are going, if this thing just dissolves, much like, I don't know, land that we've annexed and it just goes away, we end up owning it. So how can we liquidate something that we are, so
We want Sarah to answer that?
somebody, but
Well, it best be answered. So charter is kind of up here. We'll get into more definition on bylaws certainly, but the thought here is that they will be an asset on city-owned property. Can we find someone else to take it over? Does it get torn down? Do we use the dollars that are in the bank, so to speak, to be able to then go take down those facilities if they're in disrepair or abandoned? Say if one of the partners puts something up and then they go a different direction. So it gives the city the flexibility to look at that as they need to. So the wording may not quite hit it exactly, but the goal is for the city to be able to control it.
okay, yeah, I think that for me is a key piece, because if we own it, then I would hate for us to incur additional expense if, the worst case scenario happens. Now we own it and now we're on the hook to take care of it. So anyway, all right. The second question that I had was regarding the fundraising activities, et cetera, and with executive, I forgot the wording that you used, but the city executive, which, is you right now, but City of Goodyear executive manager. And if the role of this board is to fundraise, is there a conflict with the city manager or a city employee out fundraising as the leader of that? Have we set up a situation where we've got a potential conflict?
Yeah, Sarah, you probably have not had a chance to work through this. We've been working through it with Rorik at a high level. So conflict of interest and that's a slide that we hit on very hard there. So if there are conflicts, we need to make sure that we don't cross that threshold. As it relates to fundraising, it would be things like putting folks in contact. We wouldn't be, probably as a city right in the middle of that, but we would certainly be able to provide them contact information and things like that. And to work on some of the grant proposals. That would be part of the fundraising we're contemplating, because we have a pretty, in terms of grant writing, we're probably the strongest of the group. Looking behind me, I don't know if Stan and Alan are nodding one way or the other, but that would be one where that's part of fundraising activities. We do know that, and it was brought up before, there are some folks very interested in providing dollars to it now. We're saying, hold up a little bit. We want to get the master plan at least started and we need to get, we will have to have an agreement with Partners for Health as well to be able to get those funds. But fundraising includes grants, and it includes just a lot of us keeping our networks alive to get those about. But if there is a conflict, we have to be very careful there. You're right.
Yeah, it seems that the line is much thinner as we get closer and closer to actual dollars. So, I have confidence that we've looked at that. But your last comment then brings up an additional one. One of the things that we're always faced with and we talked about this during the retreat, when we have a great idea, we've got to run it through this whole pipeline of things. And one of the issues is staff time. Well, if we're talking about a lot of your time and now the grant writer's time and Nathan's time, and how much staff time are we really talking about with executing this? And have we, how does that fit into the grand plan?
So in terms of staff time, we have monthly meetings of the board, and that's really what it's been set up as. We've had times where we've had a Saturday retreat or something where we go through some of the visioning. We will be, and especially as it relates to staff, Nathan and I are part of the evaluation team for the proposals, so we've read through those and score those. But it's really one where, as we see the master plan, we'll have a better idea of roles and responsibilities. Right now, our commitment is to get through these three things. That's the governance, that's community health assessment, and then the master plan. And then from that, we'll start to look at what the resources are required.
And I guess I look at this governance piece as if we're committing to providing our grant writer and all that. I mean, we're doing it right up from the very beginning. So, I'm excited about it. I just want to make sure that we're not getting too far ahead, from a commitment of resources when, we're either not able to deliver, or they'll take away from. Because right now our grant writer is kind of part-time. And if that turns into a full-time position, now we're talking about adding an FTE to the city to do grant writing for a nonprofit that we don't have control over. So there's just this giant ripple that I'd like to hear as this comes forward, how we're gonna see that second, third, and fourth order effect, to be dealt with. But I think the whole thing's exciting. Like I said, don't want us to stick our necks out and then find out that there's a guillotine out there.
Well, thank you for that. And it's one we're managing. And the other part of it is there will be a point where we'll have probably a part-time, non-city, but part of the board where they'd have part-time and eventually probably have an executive director some years down the road to where it'll be professionally managed.
And I don't know if everybody realized, but the CEO of the Brazo West Hospital is here tonight. He came in a little bit, and I don't know if anybody just want to recognize that he is here tonight and listening to this. Anything else? Are you finished yet?
Nope. Mayor, still have next steps.
All right, go next steps then.
So next steps, and then at the end of this, I will ask Stan Holm, as you recognized him, the CEO of Abrazo West Campus, and also Alan Swain from Cancer Treatment Centers of America, if they'd like to say a word or two as well. But the next steps are master plan consultant selection, as we talked about, the G training reporting. Pam is herding us cats on that, and so that is going on. A formal agreement between the cities and Partners for Health. So that's one we're looking at. And then finally, and it's not listed as a bullet up here, assuming, and again, it's not council voting on this, but the direction at council is for our board to go ahead and vote on getting the charter established so we can now move on to the next steps. And that would probably happen over the next month, I'm presuming. So it's important to make sure that we get any other concerns out of the charter brought up by council because we will be looking at this as a board to go ahead and vote on.
I haven't seen anybody seem concerned about this. I think we're all very pleased that we're progressing on this. I'm getting the idea from the majority. So I would say you have Sherilyn. You can
sorry.
see her better, by the way, okay, just so, okay. Sherilyn?
Bill's taken to waving for me. Thank you. I just had a clarification. The Partners for Health, is that the volunteer organization at Brazo?
That's
Campus?
correct.
No, that's great, but
Thank you. Anything else?
So, Mayor, if I may, if
May.
either of them want to have a comment or two, Stan or Alan, who've been really,
Trying to
give
suggest
them
they come up.
incredible praise for how hard they worked on this. So, if
Certainly,
they'd
I
like
welcome.
to say something.
I would like to say something. I'm Alan Swain with Cancer Treatment.
Why don't you come up and sit at the microphone, please?
I'll sit in this seat. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Alan Swain. I'm with Cancer Treatment Centers of America. I'd just like to take a moment and really give a lot of praise and thanks to Pam for heading this thing up,
Absolutely.
along with Brian and Nate. A lot of hard work has gone into this. As everyone is talking about, John Kuhn had the vision, and then also bringing in Stan Home, the CEO with West Valley. This is such a unique project, and it's very exciting from a health standpoint. Cancer Treatment Centers of America is very excited for this. And, my background, I came from West Valley. I actually built that facility back in '03. And I remember looking out there through the windows at this vacant piece of property. So it's really neat to be able to see a vision and what it can look like in the future. So really excited for this. I don't know if Stan is going to say anything, but I'd like to just say thanks again to all the hard work this team has put together.
Well, we appreciate your partnership. Stan?
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Mayor, members of the council, privileged being in front of you again as we look at this private-public partnership. As we meet monthly and we look at all the momentum being gained, and we looked at those great proposals for the master plan by those organizations that put a lot of energy and effort in those, it really is exciting to look at the next steps in the future of an innovative park for the citizens of Goodyear and beyond. And when one of the council members had asked the question about the lines get thinner, absolutely great questions as we look at a public-private partnership. There's going to be some unique ways we have to address that and protect the city. And do know that as you own the property at an incredible rate, as we look at probably a dollar amount, our acreage versus the other acreage, it really does set a great foundation for where we're headed towards healthy communities, safe communities, and things that we used to talk about 20 years ago is now in healthcare. We talked about healthy communities, and never a better time in our history have we put the energy and the efforts in something as great as this health park and what it's going to mean for not only the city, but really around the nation, as RDGE has recognized. These are things people are looking for in their communities, outside the walls of hospitals and entities. Really, what are you doing to advance care on a proactive basis and preventive basis? And I want to thank all of you for your continued support in this endeavor as we continue to advance this vision forward.
Go ahead, Joanne.
Thank you. I have to say, this is one of those pieces of the almost 10 years that I've been on this council that has been missing for our city, and that has been a true health and wellness program that we've tried to put together, and it takes phenomenal partners like yourselves to make this come to light and for it to be successful. This isn't something we can do on our own, and so I really appreciate that. And I think that as you said, the culture of wellness, we just had the conversation of a culture of care for our citizens also by bringing on the ambulances, bringing on community paramedicine. I think that's just, really looking hard at our citizens and all working together for it. So I really appreciate having you all coming here tonight and just watching this, kind of morph. It's pretty cool. Thanks.
Bill?
Stan, thanks for addressing the thin line. And one of the things that I did not talk about with that, and I took it more toward the conflict piece, but the other side, that the city has a lot of restrictions on it. We're not able to move as fast as private enterprise is, public bidding and those sorts of things. So I hope in this agreement that whatever we work out, that we're not also shackling the organization by the city required pieces, that it's able to truly move at the speed of business, because government just can't. And I think that's an important benefit to the nonprofit as well. So thanks for acknowledging that, and I apologize for not mentioning it in my earlier comments. But thank you for everything.
I'd like
you
to
and Alan,
add
thank
to
you.
that, though. I think the city has worked very hard at closing up that length of time on all the projects we're coming in. So if we continue on that path, I understand where you're hesitant, because it isn't built yet. It isn't even really where you can put your hands around it and feel it and touch it and smell it. But I think that our city has decided and has been working on making sure when companies come here that we are attentive to all their needs, and we know time is money, and we are moving things forward in shorter period of time. So if we keep improving upon that, by the time we get to this, we'll be just really masters at it. So
I would just like to reiterate Alan's comments on Pam and Nate and Brian. They've been outstanding to work with, and may be a surprise to you, but they actually are moving it very quickly in our eyes. So to this point, it's been a great partnership.
very good. Well, thank you very much for the presentation tonight. I think we're all excited about this, and I think as we go forth with the public with more information, they'll ride along with us on it. So thank you very much. All right, I think we're finished with this meeting. I'm going to adjourn it, and then we'll be up at the dais for the next meeting. This meeting is adjourned.